Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the AOC C27G2Z. And if at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's talk about it. Firstly, this is a 27-inch screen size with a resolution of 1920 by 1080. This also has a slight curve, a 1500R curve, so that is kind of cool for immersion. And this is a VA-based panel. So yes, you are gonna get a slightly lower PPI here, but the benefit there is if you really focus on screen size, you want that immersion, but you also don't have a rig that's powerful enough to push 1440p at 240 Hz, this could definitely be a great option there. In addition to that, the value-wise 1080p 27-inch monitors are probably the best value in the entire monitor industry right now. So yes, while the PPI is lower, a lot of times you can find 27-inch 1080p variants of monitors, the same lineup, cheaper than you can get the 1080p 24-inch variants. Now, personally myself, while yes, the PPI is lower and you do notice it, I still, like 9 out of 10 times, would have a 27-inch panel at 1080p over a 24-inch panel at 1080p if they are the same price or the 27 is cheaper. This is because to basically change that visual PPI, just move the monitor slightly away. The math lines up there. If you put a 27-inch panel here on your desk and a 24 here, visually it's going to look exactly the same. So I would personally rather have the bigger screen, but maybe that's just me. All right, for the ports, this has two HDMI 2.0s, one DisplayPort 1.4, and then a 3.5mm audio jack, and that's all you get. But at this price point, that's also what we expect. Now, for refresh rate and variable refresh rate, obviously this hits that full 240 Hz, which is awesome to see at this price point. And for variable refresh rate, there's no problems with NVIDIA cards. This works great, as this does use FreeSync, but no problems, no screen tearing, no jittering, nothing like that. It works really good. Now, brightness here is advertised at 350 nits of brightness, which is actually an impressive brightness comparing all the other specs at this price. But after testing, this reached actually around 307 nits, which is still very good, but is definitely at that like beginning point. I don't really love monitors that are in that 250 nit range. 300 is where it really starts, where it's like, this is good. 350 nits is really nice. And then 400 nits is really where it's like, okay, this is premium. But again, under 200 bucks, that 307 nits after testing is actually really good, I think. Now for colors, this covers 89.8% of the DCI-P3 color space. So not a crazy wider color coverage than just the sRGB color space, but you are still getting a little bit more, which is nice. However, there is no HDR on this panel, so you can't really take advantage of that wider color coverage with like HDR games specifically. Now, color accuracy out of the box is not horrible, but all of the colors are off. Now, the color temperature isn't absolutely crazy, making the whole image look wild. So out of the box, this isn't gonna look horrible. You're not gonna go in games and be like, that's off, that's super off. So it's not that bad. The colors are just not quite super accurate. I wouldn't do like any photo correction or things like that you need. And the biggest unfortunate part here is that the OSD or the menu system doesn't actually have the physical controls to change up and slightly correct your colors. It does have like an RGB changer, but it's definitely like not changing the right things, if that makes sense. So that's definitely not something the OSD can do, which is really unfortunate. So to do a full calibration, you will need to do an on-system calibration. But again, 95 or 99% of you are not going to have the money for a calibration tool if you're only spending under $200 for this, and a lot of calibration tools are more expensive than this monitor itself. So if you're not gonna be doing any color accurate work, it's a non-issue. It's good out of the box. The color temperature isn't horribly off, and everything looks good. It looks decent. Now, for contrast ratio, because this is a VA panel, you actually get slightly higher than something like a traditional IPS panel at 3,000 to 1. So the blacks are slightly deeper. They're not that bluish hue that you get on IPS panels. And a nice quality control thing here is that for backlight bleed, my unit, which is right back there, actually had absolutely none, which was really impressive to me. Typically in this price point, you'll at least have some backlight bleed, but mine was great. So quality control seems to be good, at least, maybe just for the one that I have. Now, this panel doesn't have any like real issues except one thing, and that is Scanlines. This panel does have Scanlines. They're not super apparent Scanlines on everything. They really only show up on light pinks, light purples, light greens, so more pastel-y colors that are constant. So when one color is just pretty much constant, or gradiented, you will see some scan lines. On just the white parts of your screen, or if you're playing games specifically, you're not going to notice scan lines at all, like 0% of the time. But when you're using the desktop and you do have just one single color, you are gonna get scan lines. So that is something to consider. All right, now let's talk response time and ghosting. This is really important as VA panels typically have much more ghosting than IPS or OLED-based panels. Now, there is ghosting here. It's not the worst ghosting I've seen, and it's definitely still playable and worth it to have 240 Hz, but keep in mind that it's visible. The fastest overdrive setting takes away a lot of the ghosting, but has overshoot. So put it one notch down from the top overdrive setting. I will say, I do believe that this could have been tuned significantly better for ghosting. It does decrease ghosting quite a bit when you do go up in the faster overdrive settings, but the difference between the second from fastest overdrive setting and the fastest is pretty radical. And I do think there could have been better tuning if they had just gone a little bit closer, but not quite overboard, causing pixel overshoot. So there is some of that, but the fact that you can get a 27-inch curved panel that still has decent brightness at 240 Hz is really impressive. So that's why I still think this is a good monitor, but you just have to keep in mind that you are not getting everything. There are things that you're going to have to be okay with when getting this monitor, but that's the trade-off because of the price. Now, stand and build quality here is actually very, very good. Height, tilt, swivel. It doesn't feel too crappy. It doesn't feel like the highest end stuff, but it doesn't feel like absolute junk. So overall, I'm really impressed with the stand, but AOC's been doing that. I think I've used this stand on a few other monitors before, so it's definitely very good. Now, the menu system and controls here absolutely suck. Now, when I was talking about like the color accuracy, and the menu system just did not have the controls to slightly tune on the OSD itself the colors there. It just doesn't have a lot of controls that I wish it did. I don't have as much control over the panel as I wish that I could without doing stuff on the actual system itself. Besides that, the controls absolutely are horrible. It's 4 buttons. It's not intuitive at all. It takes a long time, even when you get used to it, to navigate around. It doesn't look great. It looks pretty bad. And it's really hard to find different menu items. If you're not used to like on-screen menus at all, you're gonna have zero clue what anything means in here. So it was just really, really badly put together. The menu system is definitely, it gets a F from me. It's a total fail there. It's just really, really bad. I don't like it at all. It's usable, and if you only need to like change your settings one time, I guess you can be Googling for 30 minutes and then figure it out, and you'll have it set and it'll be good to go, but definitely not even close to a great menu system. For Vesa compatibility, this is compatible with 100mm by 100mm Vesa mounts. But let's talk about the most important section of the video, price and value. Now, for the price of only $179.99, this is still worth it to some of you, not everyone. I'm not just gonna blanket say, buy this monitor, which I do for some monitors because they're that good. This one is still a fantastic value for a 240 Hz panel if that's what you want. If you're like, I want a slightly larger screen size at 27 inches, I would like a curve, or maybe you're impartial to the curve. It's not a super intense one, so I don't think it'll bother many people if you dislike it. But if what you really want is 240 Hz, this is probably the cheapest 240 Hz panel I'm going to recommend. There is ghosting on here. It's not horrendous ghosting, and there's not a lot of like artifact or anything like that, so that's still good. But if you really want that 240 Hz, if you're into more fast-paced gaming, there are compromises here, but yeah, if what you really want is 240 Hz, under 200 bucks, I still think this is a good value monitor. Again, if you want to check it out, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. And I just did a review of the Gigabyte M27Q X. That is a monitor in the around $400, $450 price range, so a little bit more than double this monitor. But if you want 1440p, 27-inch screen size, but it's an IPS panel here, it's in the same segment, but it's upgraded completely, and it has basically no issues at all. That's just a solid monitor at a solid price point. You can check that video out right here. So that's if you want a 240 Hz panel, but it's just a little bit more premium. But yeah, this is Type C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.